Cambridge Film Show.
This is Cambridge Radio.
Good afternoon and welcome welcome all to the Cambridge Film Show's End of the Year Top 12 2025, our final show of the year. And this is the one, I would say, where loyalties are maybe somewhat tested and at least one of us quietly wonders how things made the list, but many of us are very happy with it. Broadcasting right here on Cambridge Radio across the city in South Cambridgeshire, this is going to be our chance to look back at the films that moved us in 2025 across a diverse number of opinions. I'm Emma Marchant. Joining me for this annual reckoning is Yossi Osman, my gorgeous co-host.
Hello.
And we're also going to be hearing from, and let me see if I can get this right, Mark Walsh, Luke Irwin, Matt Taylor, Stuart Pask, Vicky Eyre, Lorcan O'Neill, Nick Kitchen. I think that's probably enough. Everyone's going to be armed with some strong views. Everyone's going to be armed with their memories. But everyone is mostly of the shared belief that we really do need to keep cinema alive and kicking. So our top 12 is, as it's been for the last couple of years, the result of a highly scientific process which includes not one but two ballots, debate and compromise. But they are not necessarily the biggest films of the year, but they are the ones that we think have lingered with us and that we've really enjoyed watching, and the ones that we kept talking about. So settle in, relive these 2025 highlights and prepare to agree passionately with us, or maybe sometimes not at all. Let's begin, and Yossi's going to have number 12.
And coming in at number 12, our film is F1.
And if you don't love me now, we'll never.
My Rook is a phenomenal talent, but he's young.
Ever break Jack.
You plus him, boom! I got a team.
I can still.
When was the last time you won a race?
Sunday, Daytona.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Formula One.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then same as you.
I'm offering you an open seat in Formula One. The only place you could say, if you win, you are the absolute best in the world.
Break Jack.
Directed by Joseph Kosinski, who did Top Gun Maverick. And was that in our top films of the year one year?
Most definitely.
It must have been, because I remember it being very popular. So this is a sports drama that takes viewers into the world of Formula One racing. It stars Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes, a former F1 driver coaxed out of a 30-year retirement to help rescue a struggling underdog team. It also has performances from Damson Idris, Kerry Condon, Javier Bardem and Tobias Menzies. And it was clearly a popular one with some of our reviewers, including Luke. Why don't we start with you? Tell us how this film worked for you.
Oh, I had an absolute ball with this film, and I think it's a real surprise because the backstory of this film is it was produced because Apple purchased the rights to broadcast Formula One, the actual sport, rather than the film. And this film has widely been regarded as I think people might unfairly say, a propaganda piece to sort of corporate propaganda to boost the appeal of Formula One in America in particular. And that does not seem like the sort of thing that would be a great starting point for a film. But much like we think about films that have had other difficult starting points, we think about Pirates of the Caribbean. You take a great set piece, you take a really charismatic actor, and you make something incredibly cinematic with it. And there's something just purely cinematic about putting a camera in a Formula One car and having it race around a track, cutting occasionally to close-ups of Brad Pitt being incredibly charming and incredibly charismatic. And this isn't, the dialogue of this film isn't spectacular. There's not a ton of character growth or character development, but there's something incredibly cinematic that feels like it makes up for so many of the issues that you may have with this film.
Yeah, you raise a couple of good points there, actually. When you think about F1 as a sport, it's kind of high octane, it's very fast paced, it's quite thrilling. And so I've not seen this film, I'll put that caveat out there. So I've got two questions. So the first I'll put to you, Matt, and then I'll put one to Emma. So how do you think this film is accessible for someone who might not be a fan of F1? Is it something that works for all audiences, or do you need some knowledge of the sport?
I think it very much does work for all audiences. I mean, I think having some knowledge of just the structure of an F1 race will help you, sort of knowing that the cars do need to take breaks at certain points to change their tyres and take on fuel. But what I think this does really well is getting you into the strategic mindset of being part of an F1 racing team, because the sort of recurring idea that goes through the film is that F1 is a team sport. It's okay, you've got Damson and Brad in the cars, but behind them there's the race director and there's the pit crews and there's the person who designs the cars, and only if all of these people are coming together can you then begin to win. And that's what I really like about it. I'm a big fan of sports movies, of seeing a team in disarray sort of gradually come together. And this gave me all of the good things about Top Gun Maverick, which is obviously same director and similar kind of spectacle, but without the troubling geopolitics that I thought Top Gun Maverick brought with it. This just was enjoyable. Yes, it's a piece of corporate propaganda, but if corporate propaganda can be this good, then please sign me up for more of it. It's just
more corporate propaganda.
Yeah, I'd say just pure cinema. I mean, like, it's the most fun I've had in the cinema this year. I went to see it twice. The cinema was packed both times. People were laughing at all the right moments, gasping at all the crashes, and just having a fantastic time. And the soundtrack just gets you going. I've been listening to Lose My Mind in particular on repeat ever since I saw this. So yeah, absolutely loved it. Just give me more corporate propaganda if it can be this good.
Fantastic. And Emma, just a final word from you. I mean, Matt mentioned sports films, and this kind of sometimes they can be quite formulaic. What's different about F1 for you?
I think for me it's probably Joseph Kosinski behind the camera, because I don't find F1 interesting to watch at all. But my goodness, if F1 looked like this, you know, the final shot of Brad Pitt's race, you know, he talks about the perfection of racing and how it feels like you're flying, and they do this incredible shot at the end. And I went to go see it in IMAX with my son. Neither of us are big Formula One fans. And probably if you're a massive Formula One fan, you might even get a bit cross that it's just people basically mansplaining F1 to you for 2.5 hours. But when people look this good doing it, Luke already alluded, when they look like Brad Pitt and they just in his element, and they look like Damson Idris and they look like Javier Bardem, I'm very happy about that. And also I think Kerry Condon plays a really, really strong sort of love interest, but they don't even have to go down that road. It's just a really entertaining, rollicking good time, as Matt said.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's our number 12 film. It is F1, and I think if you would like to see it, it's no longer showing in cinemas, but it is on Apple TV. Yes, it's on Apple TV. So that's our number 12.
Coming in at number 11, we're going all the way back to the beginning of the year with A Real Pain.
Word of warning, this will be a tour about pain. Our grandmother and Benji were super close.
I mean, she was the coolest. I've just been in a real funk, I guess, since she died. Just haven't...
You're looking back at the horrors of your family history.
We completely cut ourselves off from anyone else's true pain.
Why are you doing this?
Oh, man, you used to, feel everything.
Obviously, there are triggers along the way.
We're not at the right station.
And you didn't wake me up.
Oh, you were having such a good nap, dude.
Jesus
you were like,
Christ, you're on a tour
sorry.
group
Yeah,
with
I know, I just didn't have the heart to wake you up.
Has he always been like this?
I love him, and I hate him.
You ain't alone.
Directed by Jesse Eisenberg and also starring him alongside Kieran Culkin as mismatched cousins who travel to Poland to sort of reconnect with their roots, but it's a sort of mismatched buddy comedy, but it also unlocks some real deep subjects, I would think, such as shared grief, generational trauma, pain, and obviously also family roots. Matt, when we did this originally on the show, you were a huge fan, and in fact, I was only just saying we didn't really give it the love it deserved on the show it was reviewed on, because it was such a packed schedule at that point. It did obviously do incredibly well. Kieran Culkin swept every single acting award, every supporting actor award for his part in this, and you loved this. Please tell me why.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think it did a lot of really interesting things, certainly with his portrayal of someone who's struggling with mental health alongside the sort of grander struggle of making sense and reckoning with the Holocaust and its impact it's had on your entire sort of ancestry. Kieran Culkin, as you said, is fantastic. I don't want to say he's doing the same thing as in Succession, but his character certainly has a similar kind of nervous energy to his Roman in Succession. But it's not a big movie. It's a kind of small character-focused movie of these two cousins who are also friends, but also friends who are growing apart, and them sort of remembering why they had a relationship in the first place, but also trying to rebuild that relationship that's fallen away. And just the more you learn about Kieran Culkin's Benji and why he is the way he is, I just found it completely fascinating and very moving, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone.
Mark, Matt sort of alluded to that in his description there. This is essentially sort of like a buddy road movie, but something did elevate it into massive critical success. And like I say, we're talking about it in our top 12 11 months after it came out. What do you think it is that lifted it above that?
I think for me it's the way in which Jesse Eisenberg manages the tones of the film so well, and you see the two characters of these cousins of him and Kieran Culkin, their relationship genuinely evolving. But it's also a film that doesn't feel like it's had to fix everything by the end. We're seeing a section of their lives which tells us a lot about them, the way in which they're evolving as people. The film does reach a natural end point, but it's the kind of thing where you'd love to see how they are in 10 years' time. You'd love to see how they continue to evolve as people. You would genuinely want to spend more time in their company. I think I quite like the way that Jesse Eisenberg has taken the more subdued of the roles. He would. One of those things, I remember that version of Frankenstein where the two leads kept swapping on stage every night. I could happily sit and watch a film where Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg swapped roles and did the other roles, because I think they would both do both of these lead roles impeccably. I'd almost feel Jesse Eisenberg was more naturally cast in that more extroverted role, but he does so well to just rein it back and watch the relationship between the two build and evolve and uncover some real poignant human truth.
Well, maybe that's a sign of a really solid and gifted director, and also a generous director, in that he did cast himself in the sort of slightly less flashy role, but also does an amazing job really in what's only his second feature film. Yossi, you saw this and enjoyed it. Please tell us a little bit why.
Yeah, just on the back of what others have been saying, I think what I really liked about this is it's exploring some quite tricky themes, but it does it in a very understated way. It's not overly sentimental, but you still really feel for the characters in this, and the kind of themes that it's exploring around sort of like inherited guilt almost really resonated with me. We don't live through history sometimes, but a lot of us carry it, and I think that was a really interesting thing to explore in this film, particularly when you look at Kieran Culkin's character and you start to understand why he feels the way he feels. And I just think there was a sensitivity there that was played and really well thought out, that when I left the film it kept me thinking about it for quite some time, and even though that's not my history, that's not my experience, it still resonated with me.
And I think that is a real pain. It came in at our number 11, and it is available to stream on Disney Plus, or you can rent and buy it on Prime Video.
And our number 10 film of 2025 is One Battle After Another.
For bringing justice to the vigilante group known as the French 75, we are here to award Stephen Lockjaw with the Medal of Honor.
You have to understand, Will,
me and Mom used to run around and do some real bad shit. They got hurt. Now they're coming after us. Sorry.
I didn't ask for this. That's just how the cards were rolled out for me.
It's not cards. You don't roll cards. It's dice.
Dad, what is wrong with you?
You know what freedom is? No fear. Just like Tom Cruise.
One Battle After Another is Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, and it's loosely inspired by Thomas Pynchon's Vineland. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a former revolutionary dragged back into a life of chaos when he and his daughter are targeted by a corrupt military officer. It features a very good ensemble cast, in my opinion, including Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Regina Hall, Teyana Taylor, and Chase Infinity. And interestingly, it is shot in VistaVision, a format that has since been quite dormant since I think almost like the 1960s. So this is quite an experimental project. And on that, Emma, because I think you were a big fan of this, it is quite an experimental film, I think.
It was one of the most spectacularly arresting visual films I've seen this year on the big screen, and for that's one of the reasons I loved it as much as I did. And for the things you've discussed as well, this is a cast at the top of their game. I think Leonardo DiCaprio cast in this sort of, everyone's sort of saying he's entering the dude from the Big Lebowski phase of his life or whatever, as this sort of stoner ex-revolutionary who just is really living for, his daughter, beautifully played by Chase Infinity. But it was a really it's really hard to categorise this film. I didn't know what to expect when I went in, but I loved every second of its fairly lengthy running time, and not just for the visuals, but also Sean Penn as Stephen J. Lockjaw. It's
what
a remarkable performance from him. It's a remarkable performance from Benicio del Toro as Sensei Sergio San Carlos. And I think, although it's based on a book from, I think, 1990, and it's set in some sort of unspecified, vaguely dystopian future, it has a lot to say about the state of America today. And I think it's wonderful that such a politically minded and politically questioning film comes out and is doing so well.
Yeah, on that actually, I think it is fair to say, Mark, that this is quite a politically charged film. Now, I seem to recall an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson where he actually said he started writing this about, I think, the first concepts in the 90s, and yet this still feels quite timely, doesn't it?
I think it feels very much of this particular time, and also weirdly quite timeless as well. I think it's one which will still relate to future generations in years to come. I think part of that maybe is the little quirk of the time jump that the film involves, which never really feels like we've moved forward, and maybe that itself is a statement on the politics that sit behind the film. Maybe we are not moving forward as a society, who knows? But this is a cracking film. Paul Thomas Anderson is probably my favourite filmmaker of recent times. That run he had, which included the likes of the Master, There Will Be Blood, Inherent Vice. He is a filmmaker at the top of his game. Had a slight blip with his previous film, Licorice Pizza. So relieved to see him back on form with this one, both from a directorial point of view and also with the incredible cast that he's assembled, all doing fantastic work. Leonardo DiCaprio is got a real energy I've not seen on screen for him since The Wolf of Wall Street. Benicio del Toro, just an absolute delight as well. And I've got to at this point mention as well that final car chase, which is innovative and just one of the highlights of seeing something on the big screen this year. Just so much to love about this film.
Yeah, I think as we go down the list, we'll talk about some of our favourite scenes of the year, but I think that car chase is pretty spectacular. Nick, I mean, Mark sort of mentioned it, but where do you think this sits in sort of the oeuvre of Paul Thomas Anderson, who's made some crackers?
No, he's a great director, and a director I admire a great deal. For me, there were 3 films this year that tackled the American culture wars. There was Eddington, which for me had more of a Republican feel and was tackled COVID and the way we tackled we addressed the mask wearers against the non-mask wearers. There was Begonia, which was a look at society and how we treat those on the margins of society might have a different view. And then there was One Battle After Another, and which addressed more issues of immigration, adapted from a Thomas Pynchon novel, as you've referred to already. For me, Thomas Anderson is full of gonzo characters that are really interesting. It's got a nice style to it. The scene that you're referring to with the car chase at the end felt like a direct homage to Bullitt and the Steve McQueen chase in Bullitt. Very, very similar tonally, I felt, to that. It wasn't my favourite of the 3 films for the cultural. So I did like it, but giving that sort of the way you've explained how we've come to this list, I preferred Eddington and Begonia over this. Not to say I didn't enjoy this film, and it is full of a lot of really interesting characters.
One of those makes it into our top 10, but I won't tell you which one.
Yes, one of them makes it into the top 10, and one of them doesn't. Yeah. So there we go. You can imagine listening to this. We've had a lot of debate about this list. And nonetheless, he is a fantastic director, and there's a lot to like in this movie. So I definitely recommend going and watching it if you haven't seen it yet.
Final word from you, Stuart?
I remember wanting to see it quite badly in the cinema when it first came out, but for one reason or another, I never got around to it. But it was an interesting film. It was the VistaVision again. I did sit there thinking to myself, this does look a lot like The Brutalist, and now I know why, which is reassuring to know. I wasn't just having deja vu in the cinema. I really enjoyed Sean Penn's portrayal of Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw. Made him a real sort of interesting villain. Leonardo DiCaprio's nervous energy was sort of complemented a lot of the chase sequences quite well. It did suffer a little bit from the longevity issue, which I think we talk about a lot on the show over the course of the year. And Benicio del Toro as Sensei Sergio Carlos as well. I liked his sort of contrasting calm to Leonardo DiCaprio's nervous energy. Obviously, dealing with all of the sort of illegal immigrants and things as he does, he sort of directs it very calmly in the background, whilst DiCaprio is having a very sort of self-centered panic attack.
I'm going to selfishly just jump in. I know I'm asking the questions, but just say I absolutely love this film, and I think there is an energy in this film that is almost unmatched with some of with other films we've seen this year, and I would very much recommend it. And that is our number 10 film, one battle after another.
In at number 9, it's Begonia.
Greetings. Welcome to the headquarters of the Human Resistance.
Where's my hair?
Your hair has been destroyed to prevent you from contacting your ship.
What ship?
Your mothership?
Okay. In the next 48 hours, the police and the FBI will begin a statewide manhunt. I'm a high-profile female corporate executive. I am crucial. In all humility, I can say that. Think of it like you abducted the governor, but worse. There is no possible scenario where you benefit from this incident.
That was really good. My pulse is racing right now.
Yorgos Lanthimos followed up his Kinds of Kindness with Begonia, one, I would say, of the year's strangest and boldest movies. It stars his muse, Emma Stone, and also sort of muse as well, Jesse Plemons, I guess. Jesse Plemons is playing a conspiracy theorist, obsessed theorist, who then kidnaps Emma Stone as a sort of face of CEO corruption. And it takes you places that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to, but it is sort of part conspiracy thriller, part horror, and part absurdist comedy, really. Lorcan, I think this was really, really high on your list right this year. I feel like you really loved it when you saw it, when we reviewed it on the show. Is it your favourite of Lanthimos's? What was it that really made this speak to you?
I think in terms of Lanthimos, it's between this and Kinds of Kindness. Kinds of Kindness was on my list for last year, which I was kind of downtrodden. Like The Favourite and Poor Things, I thought were just kind of fine. They're interesting. They're visually unique. There's more kind of like that Terry Gilliam-esque thing going on. That's not really my vibe. And I missed his kind of really dark, cynical, otherworldly, kind of down on the ground dramas. So with Kinds of Kindness, I was glad he was going back to kind of the real world where everyone talks a bit funny. And this is like a really good marriage between his strengths of how playing with the camera, where to put the camera, getting just really excellent, strange performances out of people, even though they're saying and acting in weird ways. I think it's a really great mystery. It's a really great setup. All the characters are really fun, but at the same time, they're really engaging. And it's, I say, one of the 3 kind of big culture wars films we have this year. And I think it does a really good job of handling some really tricky content with an ending that was just absolutely fabulous. It's just such a crowd-pleasing ending, I think, as well.
And those closing credits, I can tell you, is one of the most amazing things. We just talked about One Battle After Another and how that was just visually incredible. Those closing credits is possibly the most incredible thing I've seen in the cinema this year. Nick, you just talked about One Battle After, and you mentioned Begonia, just as Lorcan has alluded to, as one of the other big culture war films, but you said you preferred this one, so you must be very happy to see it in at number 9.
I am very happy to see it in at number 9, and I wasn't sure at first. It took me a while, and a rewatch and a lot of reflection on it, because it takes a while to get going. But that's, I think, part of the charm, not the charm, but the way why the film works so well is it gives space and time for the characters and their motivations, such as they are, to be explored and understood, so that when you get to the final third of the film, it feels the payoff, if you like, of the movie itself feels much more satisfying, because you feel you've gone on a journey with these characters, and it's not really understanding them. It's not a question of understanding their motivations, but you understand the characters and the positions in which they find themselves in. The culture war, as Lorcan was saying, here they're exploring how in the internet age, those on the margins of society get their information and skew their information and the way they interpret and see the world, and it becomes sort of twisted into this sort of digital age where we've got people with these extreme views, or not even views, understanding of the way in the world is to them. And because it's given the time and space to develop those sensibilities, the payoff and the ending, as you both referred to, which is beautiful and heartbreaking and many, many things without giving the film away, it leaves you with a very satisfying all-round movie experience.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. Mark, what I'm really, really happy to see in this, Emma Stone obviously is one of the most gifted actresses of her generation, but also Jesse Plemons to me has been criminally underrated even since his days in Friday Night Lights and his incredible performance in Date Night. And I think that Lanthimos in this uses his skills to just such a wonderful degree. Would you agree that it's great to see him front and centre?
I would, and I do. I'm a massive Yorgos Lanthimos fanboy, but I think he gives his actors space to really explore the roles they're in as well. It's not just the sensibility he brings to his films. They're always packed with great performances, able to inhabit these weird spaces which he creates. And the two leads in this, Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, are just both absolutely at the top of their game. If I was giving out acting awards, I'd be just chucking loads of medals at the pair of them at the end of this year, frankly. And without them, this would not be the film that it is. They have just such a wonderful contrasting energy. Particularly Emma Stone just assessing the situation, then gradually trying to calmly assert control. Jesse Plemons' nervousness and the way in which he's trying to adapt to the situation as well. The whole thing, it really did, give me joyous Yorgos Lanthimos vibes. And I would agree that the way in which this whole thing wraps up, while maybe a tiny predictable because it is Yorgos Lanthimos. If it was anyone else, you'd be stunned by the ending. I think because it's Yorgos, you're like, I kind of hope he goes that way, and he did. And
I was still stunned, even though it was Yorgos. But I think you're right. It feels like a really collaborative experience. I think he feels like a director who really works with his actors and works with every. I like Nick said, I rested with this film. I thought about it because a lot of it, like you say, is a two-hander, and so it's really got to rest on Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone's performances, because there is a large part of the first half that's just really the two of them after he kidnaps her. And I think the more I thought about it, the more and more I've liked this film.
I think Yorgos's authorial voice really does carry it. So yeah, you're all right. I think it is kind of all the performances come together to elevate it. But I think Yorgos just has that really strong command of exactly what he wants to get out of people and when and how it's supposed to look, which I think is really impressive.
And he does work very well with this. How many films has he done with Emma Stone now? Do we know?
Fourth now.
Fourth, yeah.
After Poor Things, To Favourite and Kinds of Kindness, right? A thoroughly well-deserved number 9, that is Begonia, and you can catch it on Prime Video.
Our number 8 film for 2025 is Warfare.
How's it going? Going well. That's that new guy energy.
Oh, he's back. That's the 4th time he's done that.
Is he peeking at probing?
Peeking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move in our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
Break up!
Warfare is a film co-written and directed by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland, based directly on Mendoza's experiences as a US Navy SEAL during the Iraq War. Set during a single encounter following the Battle of Ramadi in November 2006, the film reconstructs events using testimonies from the platoon members involved. It also stars in its ensemble cast Defero Wunatai, Will Poulter, Cosmo Jarvis and Joseph Quinn, among others. Vicky, I think I'll start with you on this one, because I think you were a very big fan of this. This film seems to be very grounded in and committed to realism. Did you find that really strengthened the message it was trying to go for here?
100%. I think this film, gathered a lot of attention because when they released the trailer, it wasn't just instant into battle. What you see is a group of guys, and I think it's they're watching a music video and suddenly they're enjoying themselves before it quickly switches the tone. And when you read the comments from that trailer I think there was a lot of people going, this is exactly what it's like. This is what it goes into. And this film is an hour and a half. It's not very long, and it just absolutely commits to where you're there with them. The sound design, I think, is what made this film so realistic to me, which is why I really want to recommend it. But also I feel so bad that no one may see this in a cinema, because to have that kind of experience was like no other. There was a detonation in this film that realistically went through my body, shook me to the core and really brought me to that scene. And I'm going to give a shout out to Joseph Quinn as well. There's definitely a scene with him where you really experience the trauma of what is going through, and he really brings it to life. And as someone that I didn't see him in a few other roles past Stranger Things, and it really just brought his grit to his kind of overall as an actor. There's just so many small cameos and standouts, but yeah, definitely Joseph Quinn and also Cosmo Jarvis. I think I hadn't watched Shogun, and them two specifically really stood out to me in this, and for the trauma that it kind of brings to you from screening this.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because this is based on Ray Mendoza's own experience, but obviously he's co-directing this, Nick, with Alex Garland, who I think the last film we saw from him was this kind of dystopian war, civil war, which came out in 2024. How would you say that this kind of compares?
Actually, it does have some tonality to it that does compare. It feels like this is a follow-up to that movie, and I know that's not how it came about. It came about because he met Ray Mendoza on the set of Civil War, and he said, I've got this scripts and my recollections, and they got together off the back of that to make this pretty much straight away. So it does feel like there's a bit of a continuum there. I would say, I totally agree with Vicky. I absolutely loved this film. It's modern warfare. How do you make a modern war film these days? It's quite a difficult thing to do. And modern warfare is all about technology and the communication, the support and the logistics that go behind it. Ultimately, quite a sort of dull thing. But this is really about the personal experiences and trauma of war and the uncertainty of war, because you do not know what's going to happen. This is real events, and they do not know which way. You get the sense, you're with them in the room, this could go this way or could go that way, and you've no idea. It's not a Hollywood movie where the hero comes out guns blazing and saves the day. You do not know who's going to come out of this well, alive, dead, whatever. You've no idea. And it's taught with a fantastic sound design that basically puts you into the unimaginably stressful situations that few more movies can really deliver these days. It doesn't unfold in the way that you expect it to unfold, because it's a true story about exactly what happened to this troop. It raises a few questions about the modern warfare and the banality of war, if you like. Why are we there? What's it about? But the explosive nature of this film, literally and metaphorically, literally, as in Vicky's quite right. There's a huge. It's wonderful sound design. There's an explosion in the middle that takes your breath away. But metaphorically, warfare is about these blasts, these moments of extreme violence, where nothing. It's quiet. There's extreme violence, and then at the end of the movie, we're back to where we started. Wonderful film.
Thank you, Emma. I think just from the conversation we've been having, Matt, it sounds like this is quite an immersive film. And just from the topic, we're talking about modern warfare here. Just help us with our listeners not to put people off this film, because obviously it's dealing with quite a tough subject matter.
Yeah, immersive is the word I would use. You really do. As soon as the battle starts, and it starts relatively early on, it really is just a consistent firefight with very little space to breathe or understanding of why this is happening. And that's what I think is interesting about it. It doesn't make any moves towards explaining to you as the audience why this mission is happening. They're not on some grand heroic mission that's going to decide the fate of the war. This really is just another day at the office, and a day at the office that goes extremely badly. So it's not like most war movies, because it doesn't really make a comment on war being pointless. It just shows you that all of this Sound and Fury has achieved almost nothing other than destroying a few people's houses and causing a lot of injuries, which I think is interesting. If you can see this in the cinema, I know it's probably not going to get any showings now, but just watching it and just having it all wash over you and not having to concentrate on plot or who anyone is, and just letting the kind of noise and the stress just get to you is an extremely immersive and intense experience. And I'd definitely recommend. This is not one, watch it on the biggest screen you can, as loud as possible. It's not one to watch on your phone with headphones. But yeah, I was absolutely gripped all the way through. I think it's really, really just grimly compelling, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's possibly sick of traditional war films that are maybe pushing a patriotic narrative. This really doesn't do that. It's just showing some young men in a situation of which they have limited control and having an extremely bad time of it.
I'm not sure if that did make our audience want to watch it now. I'm joking.
Brilliant. There you go. Thank you very much, everyone. That is our number 8 film. It is Warfare.
Coming in at number 7, it's The Seed of the Sacred Fig. This was one of the most politically urgent films of the year, I think I can say. And The Seed of the Sacred Fig uses the framework of a family drama, but it explores the fear, authority and moral fracture within contemporary Iran. I've not seen this, but it's so high in this list because the two people I have to talk about it in the studio are so passionate about it. So I'm going to turn to you, Mark. You pointed out this came out quite some time ago and it's stayed with you for many, many months. What is it about this that makes it such a good film?
I mean, I think for me, the fact that I am willing to be such an advocate for this film, saying to people, oh, by the way, my film of the year, it's amazing. It's a 3-hour Iranian film. That is enough, I think, to get anyone to kind of go, oh, no, thanks. I'll just go and watch Teletubbies again. I'm all good. But Iranian cinema I have loved for many years now since I first encountered it. For me, one of the joys of it is that it is so good at encapsulating the particular situation in that country, which is like almost nowhere else in the world, but it speaks to universal human truths about the nature of us as people and the way in which we interact with each other, and the extremes sometimes to which we will go. I can't begin to imagine what Mohammad Rasulov had to go through to even bring this film to the screen. He's been sentenced to 8 years, flogging, a big fine, simply for having made this film. 2 of the actors are still unable to leave Iran because of the political situation it's created. And more so than a lot of Iranian cinema, this is rooted in a particular moment in time with actual footage used from protests that occurred a couple of years ago, which are the events at the centre of this film. But the heart of it is a family, a father, a mother and 2 grown-up daughters, and the way in which their relationship evolves across the course of the film as gradually secrets are uncovered, suspicion begins to grip the whole family. What we have is something which begins as a simple domestic situation, becomes almost something like a harrowing courtroom drama, and then turns into, by the last hour, an action film. This incredibly tense chase as the family are heading into isolation, and it crosses so many genres. It speaks to so much about the way we are as people, about the world, and it is gripping for every single second of its 3-hour runtime. And it came out in January. It's still sitting with me today.
Yossi, Mark could not have given that, I don't think, higher praise, really. You are also pretty passionate about this. Is it as Mark intimated there, this crosses many genres, but at the heart of it, I think, as I said in the introduction, it is sort of a family drama that then uses that to go out into the bigger political picture. What was it that spoke to you?
Quite a lot of things. The fact that this film was even made at all, I think, is commendable. As Mark has alluded to, the director, Rasoloff, the bravery to make this film and what he is going through because he has made this film, as well as the cast, it's almost unbelievable. But I think we talk about this as a political film, but actually what I found most intriguing about it was how it explores the kind of internal dynamics within the family, how this kind of fear sort of penetrates them all, and how they deal with that as a family. There's this kind of intensity throughout the film. When you think about the kind of paranoia, the anxiety, I mean, the missing gun, there's this whole thing about a missing gun, right? And that's just sort of symbolic of what they're all feeling throughout the film. And I was very mesmerised by it, how it captured that, but also this is just one family in Iran, and it really spoke to me in terms of how they handled that. So yes, this is a political film, but as Mark was saying, I think there's a lot more to it than that. And it's such a strong film. I still think about it a lot. And I just have to commend Rasoloff for making this film at all, to be honest, because it's a very special one.
Yeah, and that relationship between the father and the rest of the family in particular, you see this intensely patriarchal society that operates in somewhere like Iran, and the family is a microcosm of the way in which that is working, but also then the spirit of the mother and the girls that comes through in particular moments as they are trying to push back against that and try and assert their own identity into the situation. So there are some real moments of positivity against darkness that creep out in this film as well. So there are hopefully elements of hope that linger, not from necessarily the situation in the film, but maybe for the future of what is in store for Iran. But you just get the feeling it's going to take a long time.
Well, that is The Seed of the Sacred Fig, taking us towards our top half at number 7.
Our number 6 film is Final Destination: Bloodlines.
I always knew this day would come.
I got it.
I don't think you got it.
I held him off for years.
Charlie!
Won't stop till he finishes the job. Death is coming for our family.
Maybe death's not actually coming for our family. Because that would be crazy.
Good luck.
Final Destination: Bloodlines revives the long-running horror franchise with a little bit of a generational twist. Directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, the film follows college student Stephanie Reyes, who begins experiencing visions linked to a catastrophic skyscraper disaster in 1969. A premonition originally had by her grandmother, who warns that death is now coming for the family. I'm going to admit, Lorcan, that I'm very pleased to see this in our top 12. I'm a huge fan of the Final Destination franchise, and I was very excited for this film. Do you think that it kind of successfully carries on what is quite a pleasing formula?
I think it does a number of things that is very impressive. It carries on a franchise that was done. And it manages to do it in a way that is satisfying, fresh, satisfactory, wraps up the previous films, and then sets a new path in a fun and exciting way. And I think having it, the other impressive thing it does is that it's incredibly violent, but it's like you can show this to anyone. It's incredibly violent, it's incredibly funny, it's somehow not mean-spirited. Like, you really show this to anyone and just have a really great group watch, what I think is very difficult to do. And again, I think what really caps off, I think, gives it its kind of esteem is that final appearance by Tony Todd, and that he knew he was passing, and he gets to have just the most beautiful little send-off, and they just, it's just, I cry whenever I see that scene, because it's just so perfect for him, and they gave the franchise to two guys who just knew exactly what to do with it, which is so rare and wonderful to see.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. Luke, are you a fan of the Final Destination franchise?
What a great question, because the guys here were shocked that I had this film rated so highly, having never seen a Final Destination film before. And I was really hooked by the initial trailer for this film, which is the opening set piece, which I thought looked really incredibly cinematic and unlike what I thought a Final Destination film was. And the thing that really sold me is I then heard an interview with the directors of this film, which are Zach Leposky and Adam Stein, where I think Lorcan's touched on this. I think we now have like a second generation of people who grew up with Final Destination films who absolutely love the film series, and they grew up with it. And they tell a story about how when they were meeting the producers of the film, they set up a false zoom backgrounds that had the fireplace catching on fire, and then Zach Leposky would go into the background to pretend to put out the fire, and then something would swing down from the ceiling and lop off his head like it was a Final Destination film. And so they claim that little bit of theatre is what got them this gig, and I think that shows how much humour and knowingness there is in this film that is in some ways incredibly violent, but as Lorcan says, is also very funny and very silly.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask about that, because I think what works for me with the Final Destination franchise, Vicky, is that it's kind of dark, and yes, there's a lot of violence, but it's also kind of silly, and it just knowingly accepts that. And does this carry it on as successfully as other films in the franchise have done?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that is just the actual casting job they did as well. You've got the cast is very fresh. I've barely seen any of these actors in anything projects wise, but I think the two big standouts was Richard Harmon as Eric and Erin Patrick Joyner as Bobby. They're very mismatched brothers that just deeply care about each other, and you have this kind of maternal instinct for one of them, and you just it's nice to care about the cast, and I think that's what they're very humorous throughout. But obviously, when things happen, like Lorcan said, it's a very light-hearted kind of violence in the way that it's still very gruesome, but in a way that you're like, oh, I mean, it was bound to. It's my fault for getting attached, knowing the rest of the films. And I think this Final Destination is just so fresh, like everyone said. And I mean, it's just re-traumatized, like a new generation, which is what I love about horror. I love when horror gets rebooted, like a franchise, and you just, all the things. When I was a kid, I don't like driving behind log trucks, I don't like sunbeds, and now I'll never go up a Sky Tower restaurant. And I love that about films. It really does stay with you, and obviously horror, it's hard to have an emotional impact, but I think that's a good impact to have.
Absolutely. And yes, come on everybody, join the trauma that we all have from the first few films. Matt, as Vicky's kind of said, the first few films, there are things that have real staying power that we all remember and are perhaps traumatized by. Where do you think this one sits?
Well, it was definitely unlock a personal trauma or fear of MRI machines for me. I definitely don't want to go anywhere near one of those, or I'll definitely check my pockets very carefully before I do. Yeah, I'm so happy this is so high on that list, because it, might not think it's a serious film, or might not think it has any business being considered one of the best of the year, but when something succeeds so clearly at what it sets out to do, then it's great that it can be recognized for that. 5 films previous, all wrapped up nicely with a great twist at the end of Final Destination 5. Now we've got a fresh twist on the formula, because the people who are trying to cheat death are now family instead of just random people or friends, so there's much more of a connection and fear they have for each other's well-being, which is fantastic. Some of the best and most tense set pieces I've seen in cinema this year. The barbecue scene where you, the audience, know that a shard of glass has got into the ice, but you don't know who's got the ice, and they're all drinking from their glasses. You know something terrible is about to happen. It's fantastically done. It expects you to have some knowledge of the conventions of Final Destination, and then is able to play with and subvert those in really clever ways. Yeah, this is just absolute peak of the sort of comedy horror, because it is extremely funny, and the deaths, whilst they are wince-inducing and nasty, it's so comedic that it's not going to, I think, traumatize you as a viewer in the way that a sort of more genuinely terrifying horror would. So yeah, very, very accessible, very, very fun for newcomers and old hands alike.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. That is our number 6 film, Final Destination Bloodlines.
Into the top 5, and it is the return of Benoit Blanc and the Knives Out franchise with Wake Up Dead Man.
You're the only one on stage with the Monsignor at the time of his killing. You're the only one at that church who hated his guts.
The spirit really moved him today, huh?
So tell me, what the hell happened?
Everyone thinks I did it. I didn't do it.
This goes way beyond normal police work. This is something even I have not experienced. A perfectly impossible crime.
This case is solvable, right?
I'm incapable of not solving a crime. Oh, you'll see. It's fun.
As just said, Wake Up Dead Man is probably our most recently released film in our top 10, I think, having only come out a couple of weeks ago, and in fact, only just reviewed on a previous show. But it's coming very high at number 5, showing a lot of love for this franchise, maybe not from all of us. We have a very special guest, Dave, in the studio. Dave, this came very highly in your top 10. Please explain to me.
Well, this is basically not only one of the only films I've managed to see this year, but also one of the only films I've managed to see and enjoy this year. So that's the most important thing about it. I'm just very happy. I was terribly, horribly mean to Rian Johnson a few years ago about The Last Jedi, more than a few years now. But ever since then, I've kind of gone back, reassessed it and myself, and discovered that he's actually a bit of a genius, and I need to give his films all the kind of time and utmost respect they deserve. And in the Knives Out trilogy, and, you know, it continues through Dead Man, I'm always just very happy to see the way he's doing things. He's got subtle streaks of very dark comedy running alongside quite broad strokes of comedy as well. And it's all continuing along nicely. It's very difficult to talk about a murder mystery and not spoil the mystery. But once again, I think we can just sum it up very as, like, you know, brilliant casting. Daniel Craig, top form again. Another different, luxuriantly haired version of Benoit Blanc. So glad they decided to let him keep the ridiculous accent, because they were talking about having be a slightly different accent every time at one stage. You're like, no, keep the, what is it they call him in the first one, Kentucky Fried Colonel. Keep that accent going the whole time, because it's just a whole load of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Mark, this has become very, very high up in your list. We all know, well, I mean, regular listeners may or may not know that obviously religion is a large part of your life as well. And this obviously this touches on a lot of themes of religion, mortality, death. It's a slightly more darker, gothic sort of layout in this one. What made you love it so much?
Yeah, I mean, just to say on that, I am a layman.
Apart from you wanting to be Benoit Blanc.
Well, indeed. I mean, because he's got the wonderful 3-piece tweed suit, and, you know, I wish I could wear my hair as long as him. It's getting there at the minute. But, you know, I'm a lay minister in the Church of England. Other religions are available. And, you know, this film is an interesting way of exploring that, because you have Benoit Blanc, the absolute avowed atheist, against Josh O'Connor's Catholic priest. And
ex-boxer.
Indeed. And at the end of the film, without spoiling anything, I don't think either of them have really changed their position. But actually, that's part of what's wonderful about it. Their ideologies are brushing up against each other in the middle of this murder mystery. But it's got all those things that we love about Rian Johnson films. It's got the incredible dialogue, the really dark humour. You know, so as well as exploring more thematically than the last two films did, and that's not to do them a disservice in how much they explored thematically, because they did quite a lot. It's got another of these wonderful ensemble casts. It's just an absolute pleasure to watch. I love all three of these films, and I love this one the most.
Fair enough. Vicky, it's been touched on, obviously, a cast stuffed with famous people, with an amazing Glenn Close, who I'm really here for the third act of Glenn Close's career, I will say that, plus 2 Avengers alumni and a whole bunch of others. Did anyone stand out for you? What was it about this film that made you score it so highly?
I think personally, I mean, the ensemble cast, I didn't have the best time with. I think Glenn Close was incredible. I think Josh Brolin was a standout as just an evil minister, but not actually that evil. He's just a bad person, realistically. But it just comes across so dark. Like you said, that gothic presence is very throughout the dramatic lighting, the stained glass. It was very much, it very adds to the atmosphere. But I think this being headlined by Josh O'Connor, who is, you know, we talk about men of the moment and we've talked about Paul Mescal, and I think as Josh O'Connor's, he's kind of, I think I invested quite early in his career about how talented he is, and I think it's really shines him in a good light, and he has a really nice neck tattoo that I was very fond of throughout the whole thing.
A little bit different from his breakthrough as Prince Charles, obviously. In the
very, very much so, and I just think him and Daniel Craig bounce off each other so well throughout this that I just had such an entertaining time just watching their chemistry on screen, which I think realistically Daniel Craig he's a very good co-partner in a lot of his films, but this was very special in a way that I was like, I don't want to say I just had an enjoyable time, but it's hard to get that sometimes. But I was thoroughly enthralled throughout all of this, just watching them together.
Sometimes that's all we need, right, is a really enjoyable time. Stu, are we still here for the mystery at the core of this, or are you just here, as we've all sort of intimated, to see a lot of really good actors?
I mean, yes. So Daniel Craig's is very flamboyant in Benoit Blanc, and that's really enjoyable. And I think that's probably what's going to draw a lot of people back from enjoying his portrayal in the previous two films. But in terms of the actual mystery itself, now I'm speaking as someone who's watched a lot of Jonathan Creek growing up, so I've seen a lot of zany plot devices used in potential murders and crimes and stuff, and I think this sort of flows along similar zany lines. Just ludicrous enough to be just on the periphery of belief, which possibly contrasts nicely with the sort of the beliefs in the film, whether you're of faith, whether you're not. Can I believe that this guy is innocent, or can I believe that this plot is conceivable at all?
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. I think everyone's given that a fine review. It is our number 5 film, can you believe it? And it is still streaming on Netflix because it only just dropped there. That is Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man.
And our number 4 film for 2025 is I Swear.
Morning, John. Late again.
Traffic was terrible.
John, I need to take you shopping after football. You're starting big school in 2 weeks.
Ladies?
Yes, John!
I dream of a lady in body. A tale that she...
Get lost! Look at him! John! Hey! Can't help it! I was ashamed today!
We're going to get you better. Next to no time.
I Swear is a Scottish biographical drama written and directed by Kirk Jones, and it tells the true story of John Davidson, a man living with severe Tourette's syndrome at a time when people didn't really understand the condition. It explores Davidson's life before and after the 1989 television documentary John's Not Mad, which actually brought some public visibility to Tourette's in the UK, although you don't actually find that out until the end of the film. It stars Robert Aramayo in the lead role, alongside Maxine Peake, Shirley Henderson and Peter Mullen. Matt, this film, it kind of surprised me. I didn't hear much about it, and then it was in the cinema, and I was actually quite blown away by this. How did this film make you feel?
Well, it's interesting because this really does marry two distinct emotions, that being humour and tragedy, because this film is extremely funny. A lot of the humour is derived from seeing him transgress social norms in a way that's amusing to see. But then you're sort of hit with the second wave but it's incredibly sad and devastating to be unable to exist in the world without upsetting people. And you sort of see, as the film goes on, just how dangerous a place the world is for Tourette sufferer John, as he's beaten up in the street for offending someone through no fault of his own. He's in court because he's been involved in a fight, again, started completely involuntarily. So it's really a film of two halves, because the first half in particular, there are so many of these negative instances of him being shunned by his family and being unable to form relationships or hold jobs. But it's only when Peter Mullen's character takes a chance on him at the beginning of the second half that we see him being able to put his life back together, and then we sort of have an uplifting trajectory from then on. I think it's the kind of film that everyone will enjoy. I think that's why it's come so high in our list. It's potentially not going to be anyone's favourite film of the year, but almost everyone who's seen it has thought it to be very, very good, and I can highly recommend it to anyone.
Mark, I think when I was watching this, I was a little bit nervous at first because I was worried that maybe they kind of sensationalise Tourette's, and even as Matt's kind of alluded to, there's a lot of humour in this, but it doesn't. I was worried it was going to feel quite exploitative, but actually I think they kind of got this bang on. What was your take?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, Elsie, because I am of the generation that remembers, the original documentary coming out and of Tourette's being a sort of playground joke. Of that being something that you would see people mocking the afflicted. Thankfully understanding has got a lot better, but seeing that transition occur, I mean, it really does help by having such an incredible cast in this. The supporting actors as well. Peter Mullen, Shirley Henderson, Maxine Peake. They're British acting royalty, and they're all giving absolute top quality work here. But there really is this wonderful humanity at the heart of this film. This resilience, this all embracing love of people despite their flaws or because of their flaws that comes through, and it's a film that will leave you with a really warm feeling afterwards. It's also it's not afraid to make a little bit of fun of the situation. The opening scene, the sort of in media res, is of John going to pick up his MBE and being in the room with the Queen, and then of course there's an outburst of Tourette's. Chortle, very funny, but actually, the film does make the most of highlighting the humour of the situation in a sensitive way that I think he himself embraced, but also really getting at the incredible levels of humanity.
Yeah, and just a final point from either of you. I feel like we, in talking of this film, we do have to talk a lot about Robert Aramayo's central performance in this and just how good he was as John. Does anybody want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where you kind of think, has he got Tourette's? Hasn't he got Tourette's? He disappears so completely into the role that you forget you're watching a performance at times. And that is the biggest testament you can play to any actor, I think.
And you just think it can't possibly have been scripted as to the level of detail he gives in his performance. So he must have been doing a lot of work to actually make this feel authentic, and he does such a fantastic job with it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That is our number 4 film, and it is I Swear.
Into the top 3, can you believe it? And it is The Ballad of Wallace Island.
You made it okay?
Is there not like a harbour?
It's sort of nature's harbour. Welcome to Wallace Island. No!
Do you sell rice? My fire got where?
We've got pasta.
Has to be rice, apparently. Oh, you've got rice pudding, look. Rice pudding definitely won't work. Well, not with that attitude. No, it won't.
You know it isn't.
The great Herb Maguire. Coming all the way out there without your roadies. Which brings me to the thorny issue of payment.
Where will the audience be? You said there'd be 100.
I said less than 100.
Is it just you?
Yeah.
Right. I'm literally playing to one guy. I'm going to have to take out a restraining order. Can you shut the door?
Absolutely.
No, I meant...
Oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry, Herb. I'm not really used to having guests.
Oh, yes, indeed.
The Ballad of Wallace Island, I think, is probably one of the surprises of the year, to be honest, in how well it's done and also how well it's performed in our top 10, considering, again, it came out quite some time ago. It is a sort of melancholic, deeply British comedy brought to us by Tom Basden, writers and stars Tom Basden and Tim Key, who are best known, I think, for their sitcom Away We Go on BBC. So that's where it comes from, and it's a story of Tim Key plays a lottery winner who's using his winnings to bring his beloved folk band, who have broken up, played by Carey Mulligan and Tom Basden, as a folk duo who were romantically and musically involved and now broken up. Tim Key loves them so much that he offers to pay them so much money to come back that they can't refuse them, and that is where the story begins. Matt, you put this high on your list. You loved it. Tell me why.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this has done so well with our ratings. And in terms of my emotional response, this is the film that really got me the hardest this year, sort of in its portrayal of almost an anti-rom-com, because when you sort of see where this film is going. You might think you can see towards the end, but it actually does subvert the romantic aspect in a way that makes it feel a lot more realistic to me, that just because there was a relationship in the past that was very strong, and just because you may want to rebuild things, it may not be in your power to do so. And I thought it was such an interesting portrayal of how humans really relate to each other. You could certainly be frustrated by Tim Key's central performance, and certainly if his comic persona grates on you, then this is not a film for you. But I think I found it really interesting to learn more about his sort of strange reclusive character and sort of find out why he is the way he is in a way that really made it quite an emotional kind of gut punch for me as I was watching it and learning why he wants to put on this individual folk festival. I think it's one of the surprises of the year for me. Absolutely top draw.
Mark, that was a rave review there from Matt. He touched a little bit there on Tim Key, who obviously is central to this. And has had quite the year because, of course, he popped up in a bird suit, oddly, in Mickey 17 as well.
He did,
so
yeah.
He's
going up in the world.
Exactly, he's living his Hollywood dreams. What have you got to add to that? What would you say about this? I mean, I watched this and I found it an absolute blinding surprise out of nowhere. I really, really liked it.
Well, I have to confess, first of all, to a certain amount of bias on this film, because I did host the Q&A with Tom, Tim and James, the director, at the Arts Picture House.
A little bit of a humble brag there, like it.
But, you know, the joy of getting to meet these people in real life, and I will say, I do think they embody their characters to a certain extent, in that Tim is a little more eccentric and reserved, and Tom is the more outgoing. But, you know, I watched a screening of this film before I saw it with them in the cinema. What I tried to do with the audience when I saw it was to encourage them to stay to the end. So often at a Q&A, audiences will just, drift away as soon as the film is over. The entire audience stayed and sat right through the end credits and gave a massive round of applause at the end. It's one of the best receptions I've ever seen for a film in person. And the film absolutely justifies it. It's expanded from a 25-minute short that Tom Basden and Tim Key made a few years ago. They have done something exceptional in bringing that to full length, bringing in Carey Mulligan's character. And also, massive credit to Tom Basden, who wrote 15 folk songs for this film. He's not a musician by profession, it's an amateur hobby of his, and he's written this incredible set of music.
Do we think he had some help from Carey Mulligan's real-life husband, Marcus Mumford?
Apparently not. Apparently, they were, Carey and Marcus were kind of blown away by what Tom had achieved with the music here. So, credit him in that sense as well. It is, for me, in many ways, the most British film this year because of its wonderful eccentricity. I'm going to spoil one of the jokes, unfortunately, because there's a scene where we're seeing how Tim's character won the lottery and then blew all the money, and Tom's like, "Well, how did you manage that?" And then Tim's like, "Oh, then I won it again later on." We're in a week in the news where someone has done that twice in real life. Truth is stranger than fiction. But, all these wonderful eccentric moments, but the characters bond together so well. The music is wonderful. The humour is great. It's a real hug of a film, and I can't recommend it strongly enough.
I would agree with that. Yossi, what did you think? It is a very, very warm film. It's also one that I think as the year has gone on, it's now getting a lot, there is a lot of talk in it in best indie films, best of the year lists. I think it's kind of been a slow burner for critical and for audiences.
Yeah, I mean, what more can I say? I will say that I thought I would hate this film. I'm not going to lie, I really didn't think I would get on with this film at all, and it ended up being in my top 3 of the year. I really loved this film. It's very intimate. It's very empathetic. It's got some just wonderful moments in terms of the music, in terms of the feeling that you get. And I have to say, Tim Key, I know him more for his kind of oddball comedy, and yet in this he absolutely broke my heart at times. There were moments where, knowing his story, you look at his face and sort of what he's expressing, and it really moved me. I cried quite a lot watching this. So I have to say this was my surprise of the year.
And Carey Mulligan is probably the biggest name in this, obviously, in terms of stars, and I think, again, it's a really generous performance by her, because in a way you could imagine that she could kind of outstrip it with her, she's a massive star, but she doesn't. It feels it's a very small cast. It feels very intimate. It feels, again, very collaborative, and I just think for all of those reasons, as you said, Mark, it's a hug of a film.
It is, and I think, as we look back on the year, it's also interesting to see that this came out in the same week as The Salt Path. And The Salt Path was the film which was getting all of the screens and all of the attention. And now, at the end of the film, we can look back and go, this is the film that should have had all the screens and all the attention.
Well, it certainly got the attention from us because it's at our number 3. That is The Ballad of Wallace Island.
Oh, it's getting very exciting now. We are into our top 2 films of the year. And at number 2, it is Ryan Coogler's Sinners.
There are legends of people with the gift of making music so true. It can conjure spirits from the past and the future. This gift can bring fame and fortune.
Will somebody take me in your eyes?
But it also can pierce the veil between life and death.
Listen here. This ain't no house party. Y'all ready to drink? Y'all ready to sweat till y'all stink?
You want some?
You keep dancing with the devil.
So, Sinners is a horror film written, directed and produced by Ryan Coogler, and it sees him back in action with Michael B. Jordan, who stars in dual roles as twin brothers who return to their hometown and find themselves confronted by a supernatural evil rooted in the land. Now, this blends things like horror, historical drama, it's very musical, and for me, it was a very ambitious and quite interesting in terms of genre film that's come out. I'm really pleased to see that this is our number 2 film. Nick, I think you are also a big fan of this. Can you tell us why?
Who knew that Ryan Coogler's passion project would be to revisit the blues in looking at the old Mephistophelian story of selling your soul to the devil. This is kind of a remake of Walter Hill's Crossroads from, well, whenever it was, the mid-80s. But this is infused with much more gonzo style, vampires, as I say, in tow. But for me, what really... the joy I got from this film was revisiting just wonderful music and a period piece, recreating the 1930s and a sense of this community. I just wanted to spend time with Michael B. Gordon's characters and the ensemble around him. I thoroughly enjoyed being in their presence. The film then develops, and it's shot in 70mm as well, so it looked gorgeous on the screen. The music had lots of wang dang doodle, as I would call it, which is a Bo Diddley reference. But it really celebrated the culture of that music. And I say that because it is associated with, and it is has come out of slavery, much of the blues. So it's come from a dark place, but they bring so much joy with the music and to the suffering and oppression that they're under. And that the other thing that I really loved about this music was there was a question of which is worse, the Klan or a vampire. And I thought that was a really good way of expressing the situation that this community is in. But they are such a strong community, and you really wanted to spend time with them, and you really rooted for this community. They're in this illegal drinking house where they're all partying for the night. There's a word for it, I've forgotten. Speakeasy, thank you. And so you really felt for this community, and you really were with these people, and you really liked these people. And then it explodes, as I say, into this gonzo final act that's quite bit Dusk Till Dawn, bit Walter Hill Crossroads, bit all over the place. I mean, in a good way. So for me, thoroughly enjoyable music that celebrated artistic tradition. It tackled some of the political issues of the time, and it has a kind of, as I say, this gonzo, crazy, bonkers vampire element. What's not to love about that?
Yeah, I'm so pleased that you've said all that, because for me, I mean, I'm not going to lie, this was my film of the year. I absolutely loved it. What it does with genre, what it does in terms of being very rooted in culture, in history, in musical history. Yeah. Mark, I think I was talking to you before we were recording today, and we were talking about a particular sequence in this film that goes through different genres of music and shows how it's all... Miles Caton starts playing a song, and then it goes into kind of a history of music. And I said to you that that was one of my film sequences of the entire year, and I think you kind of agreed that it was so strong. What else did you love about this film?
Yeah, I will say about that particular scene as well is the fact that it not only kind of goes into the history of music, but also gets away with flashing forward as well. We get a complete sense of musical history, and we almost come out of the narrative briefly in a way that just still feels so organic. I was worried it was going to be a little bit gimmicky with two Michael B. Jordans. Some of the opening scenes, it's very much showing off the joy of the special effects about how the two of them can interact, even though of course we know there's only one Michael B. Jordan. There is only one Ryan Coogler as well, and I've loved pretty much everything he's done right back to Fruitvale Station. Creed was an amazing reinvention of the Rocky franchise. Black Panther, one of the best Marvel films. This is his best film against some really stiff competition. The love it has for music and the way that feeds into people's folk. It's a folk horror, but also it's a kind of folk musical. There's so many kind of crossings of genres and blending things together. It still manages to retain a real tension as the situation is ramping up in the barn, and you wonder how things are going to pan out. There's just so much to love about this. It was high on my list as well.
Can I just shout out, please, Jack O'Connell? I'm here for his villain phase.
Yes.
28 years later, sadly did not make our top 10. It was in my top 10 of the year, but with 28 years later and playing Remick in this, it really, I thought it is, Michael B. Jordan is phenomenal and will rightfully be nominated. I think our awards time he is, but Jack O'Connell is a very, very good
it's a great all-round cast. I think. I mean, Hailee Steinfeld as well. I mean, there's so much to love about this, I think.
Yeah, and as Mark was saying, the success of Creed and the Black Panther Marvel franchise element, this felt very much like his passion project. This felt like the film that he wanted to make to celebrate musical tradition and history. And that scene that you're referring to, I thought was fantastic because it did show why the music is relevant and important today, because it flashes forward and it says, this is the linear, this is the history of Black American culture, music, and it leads to kind of funkadelic, and it leads to sort of all these crazy futuristic funk sounds and all the rest of it. But there's a link; they're connected through history, through time. And I will just say there is a cameo at the end for one of my all-time blues heroes. So as well, that really, I won't say who.
It does tie together music, horror, and just pure spectacle, right? Ryan Coogler can direct.
He's a brilliant director. And I just want to give a shout out as well to his longtime collaborator who did the score. We're talking a lot about music here, but Ludwig Göransson, who did a fantastic score for this as well.
Agreed.
Right up there. So that is our number 2 film, and that was Sinners.
Drum roll, please. We have reached our number 1 film, and it is Weapons.
This is a true story that happened in my town. So this one Wednesday is like a normal day for the whole school. But today was different. Every other class had all their kids. But Mrs. Gandy's room was totally empty. And you know why? Because the night before, at 2:17 in the morning, every kid woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs, and into the dark. And they never came back. This is where the story really starts.
Zach Cregger's follow-up, I believe, to Barbarian, American director Zach Cregger, came out to enormous fanfare. There was a lot of buzz about this film before it came out, and my goodness, I think it's safe to say that it lived up. It lived up to it. It's impossible to put into really a genre box. I think it's part thriller, it's part horror, it's part small-time drama. It's told in these interlinking chapters with these amazing performances. And I think daring is probably the word I would use for this, and it just has ended up rightfully at the top of our pile. Lorcan, let me come to you first. What did you love about Weapons?
Oh, it's right around 2 hours. It just revels in how much fun you can have with a horror film. It sets up a mystery that gets more delectable by the scene, and then the payoff magically is actually as satisfying as the setup, which is very rare. It uses practical effects. It's a mix of atmospheric horror as well as jump scares. When we originally talked about this on the show, the cast is immaculate and everyone just gives their best performance. Julia Gardner is incredibly sympathetic. Josh Brolin's incredibly enigmatic. Alden Ehrenreich is just incredibly charming and also kind of detestable. And then Austin Abrams, I think, kind of steals the show, as does Carrie Christopher, who plays the remaining student in Miss Gandry's class. It's the type of film similar to Final Destination Bloodlines. You can watch it with anyone, have an absolute blast. It's a wonderful mystery that revels in its own excess by the end, and I cannot wait for whatever Zach Cregger does next.
Very good, Lorcan. And we touched on that in the introduction, that, like I say, this is told in 6 sort of fragmented chapters that bounce back and forward, if you like, in time and in which person, from which person's point of view you're seeing it from. Did this fragmented, sort of very unusual structure, Luke, add to the sort of tension? And let's say also that there is, this is comic.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is a film that plays with form in a way that's really accessible. Because I think when you talk about a film structure, you often think that it's doing something quite clever. And this is situated as a series of short films, which I didn't know. And you have this sense of horror when Julia Garner, the teacher who's introduced in the first act, I was really vibing with this. And I thought, wow, what a fascinating character that's leading the story. And then about 25 minutes in, it cuts to black, and then you're introduced to another character. And my heart sank momentarily, because I thought, we were having such a great time. And now that I know it's going to be one of these films, I'm worried for the inevitable bit where the one part of the story lets the rest of it down. And it did not do that. In fact, the way that this film continually gave us cliffhangers, which then paid off in the final act, was absolutely wonderful. And I'd also want to echo something Lorcan said about the humour in this film. So this is Zach Cregger, who's not a horror director. His debut film, Barbarian, but his back was a horror. But his background was in improv comedy, which you might say is its own form of horror, perhaps. But you often talk about how horror and comedy are related, and that often ends up being a comedy of excess in the way that we talked about Final Destination's Bloodlines. This is a comedy of real immaculate timing and character work. There are a few set pieces that straddle the line of what is funny and what is horrific. I'm thinking of one particular scene with Julia Garner in a store, which, if people have seen it, is one of the funniest moments in any film I've seen this year. I thought this film was brilliant. It was my number one personally, so I feel vindicated that it's the group's number one. I just think it's spectacular, and everyone needs to watch this, and they can watch it 4, 5, 6 times.
Vicky, it is a whip-smart film. Now, Barbarian was actually pretty funny as well. I mean, Justin Long's performance in Barbarian, it was up there as one of my favourite performances that year. Did 100%. You see Barbarian, and then were you expecting this to be as good as it was?
Not only did I watch Barbarian, Emma, I watched it for this show alone in the View, RIP, essentially. And it was definitely one of those cinematic experiences. I was like, I'm actually so sad no one's here in the cinema with me, because it was insane. I didn't expect the switching of storylines throughout Barbarian. So when this happened swiftly in Weapons, I was like, here we go. I'm prepared for whatever's about to happen. I'm here to piece this all back together. And generally, what a story it is. And like everything from, I think everyone's had shout outs for how good this cast is. Austin Abrams, I think, was signed on from the very first of the project. I believe everyone else interchanged, but he just stuck with it. And it's just such a good composition that leads to the final 20 minutes is just an absolute ride. You've got, I don't think anyone's actually mentioned how iconic Gladys really is in this. I think a good horror film always has a standout, standout costume that can, keep its life long. And I think that's what he's done with this one.
And a phenomenal performance from Amy Madigan. We also haven't shouted out Benedict Wong. I love Benedict Wong in this as well. He's great.
Everything you can take away is just all the good tropes of what a horror film can be for longevity. And the final 10 minutes of this had me howling. And like I said, it is for everyone. I took my friends that don't like horror to watch this because they knew it was such a hyped up experience. And like I said, it's my number one of the year, and I do feel very vindicated as well that it's risen to the top. And I think just in general, when you have so many interchanging storylines, the conclusion always needs to deliver, and this really, really paid off.
It is a strong choice. It was not actually my number one film of the year. If anyone's interested in that was The Brutalist. It didn't even make our top 12. So there you go. Democracy wins. But it is our top one. Yossi, you were absolutely... Sinners was your top film of the year, I know, and that was number 2, but you did really...
This was high.
This was
very high, so I'm very pleased.
It is a cracking watch. And in a year where, like I say, we've had such a mixture of some really heavy and intense films. I think this film, which just takes genre, throws it out the window and does something so original and so exciting, it does deserve its place at the top of our list.
And that is it. That is our top 12 of the year. I think it has been a great, great year. And I just want to say a massive thank you to all of our reviewers, to my fantastic co-host, Emma.
Thank you.
And to all of you for listening. Do you agree with us? Do you not? I mean, you can tell us on socials if you want. Cambridge Film Show, we are on Instagram, I believe. But other than that, thank you very, very much. And we are back in January. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.